In this next segment, we're just going to explore some of the different kinds of things you can do with the same basic clinical issue. We're going to be looking at a depressed client who's just saying a typical depressogenic thought, and then let's just examine some of the possible alternatives. In these segments, what you're looking for is this act consistent? And if so, which of the 6 core processes on that hexagon is being shown? Or if it's act inconsistent, why is it?
I feel like a failure. I just don't want to go on anymore. I'm tired.
Okay. So, what if there's something in here that is important to us? That there's something in this moment that could teach us. It would be kind of like something that's ugly, but if you reached inside it, there's something precious inside there. Like, would you be willing to go into, because I have the sense that you've been holding this at bay, to go into this feeling and see what's really there. That'd be an act-consistent response. It's focusing on experiential avoidance and on acceptance, and just opening up that as a possible agenda, a possible way of moving forward.
I feel like a failure. I just don't want to go on anymore. I'm tired.
So as you sort of go into that, there's kind of a heavy, entangled feel here that I see, and I wonder, like, does your experience tell you that you really are a failure? I mean, give me some examples. Like if you were to sort of defend it in a court of law, I'm a failure, what would you have to use as evidence for it? That's an act inconsistent response. We're taking the thought literally, and by doing that, maybe feeding problems of fusion with depressogenic thoughts. So in marshaling the evidence for and against this thought, we may actually be making it more central, more important, more sticky, which is the last thing that we want to do from an act model point of view.
I feel like a failure. I just don't want to go on anymore. I'm tired.
And these thoughts that come up, these kind of automatic, old thoughts, as you say them, I have a sense that they're up real close to you. It's almost you can't see anything through those thoughts. So maybe what we need to do is just move them off a little bit. Just notice that they're happening. Notice that it's coming out of your mind like that. That's an act-consistent response. It's just setting a diffusion agenda, sort of focusing in on the difference, using a physical metaphor between buying thoughts and becoming entangled with them versus looking at thoughts, including these depressogenic ones.
I feel like a failure. I just don't want to go on anymore. I'm tired.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like that too. Maybe what we should do is record when those thoughts come up. I could give you a thought record to take home, and we could sort of look to see when they show up and when they're not there, when they're more intense or less. Just a second, I'll get a recording form here out of my file cabinet. That's an act inconsistent response, not because of thought recording. You could actually do, and we do have very similar kinds of things as you might see in mainstream CBT. But the bigger worry in this clip you just saw is that when something was touched in the clinician, suddenly there was this shift of topic that didn't seem to fit very well, of thought recording, which would make me suspicious that the clinician is actually avoiding an area that is difficult for him, and therefore modeling in session that let's get off into managing the content as opposed to being present with what shows up as the part of living, which would be very hostile to the work that you do from an ACT point of view.
I feel like a failure. I just don't want to go on anymore. I'm tired.
God, and even as you say that, it seems like I can see you sort of rolling away, like your eyes go up in your head or something. Like, would you be willing just to sort of take a breath right now and just notice, what is your body doing right now? What are you feeling right now? One of the costs of avoidance and cognitive entanglement is you lose the present moment, what's happening in your body or in the world around you, and simply grounding the work in the experience of the present moment opens up some different possibilities. That was an ACT consistent attempt to come into the now.
I feel like a failure. I just don't want to go on anymore. I'm tired.
And as you enter into that thought pattern, that old thought pattern, because I've heard you say things in here like that before, there's a question that I would like to ask of you. As you notice those thoughts, who's noticing them? Who's in here? Are these thoughts noticing themselves? Or is there a person in here noticing them? That was an ACT consistent approach. We were trying to catch this contextualized self, or this transcendent sense of self, which is a place from which it's possible to experience difficult thoughts and feelings without a sense of being overwhelmed, and with more flexibility in how you then respond to them.
I feel like a failure. I just don't want to go on anymore. I'm tired.
You know, that feeling that's there as you say this, you just need to feel it. You need to go into it 100%. Like right now. Like here it comes. And it's your job to sort of take it and bring it in. So I want you to just sort of open up to this feeling. Just like allow yourself to feel overwhelmed, to feel sad. 100%. Right now. This is a kind of bullying that's going on in the name of acceptance. There are times, perhaps late in the work, where you might actually push that hard. But we're pretty clearly going beyond where this client is likely to go. You don't simply snap your fingers and say, do it 100%. You have to build the basis for it and do it in a gentler way with choice involved, values involved, as a kind of growth process. There's no speedometer glued to our foreheads. And if you get that sense in session that you're pushing a client, it usually is an indication that you're buying into some sort of standard that the client has to do X, Y, Z at some speed, which is not helpful to getting present, getting with the client, and shaping these processes in a more natural way.
I feel like a failure. I just don't want to go on anymore. I'm tired.
Yeah, I hear how it's hard. I sort of get that. There's a part of this, though, that I don't get, and I'm wondering if it's because it's sort of hard to find it in here, which is really, what do you want? Like really, what is the kind of life that you want? That's inside, or on the, sort of, if we went through this pain, that there's something that we're moving towards. My guess is it's right here, on the other side of that. And we may have to sort of go into it to get there. Simply asking the client what they really want in a heartfelt way with some additional work around it allows us to move towards the values piece. This segment was act consistent. It had a little bit of a mix there because there was an acceptance reference at the end as well, that by going into the pain we may be able to also find that sense of direction, or open up to what it is that you've put on hold while you fight these battles with the world within.
I feel like a failure. I just don't want to go on anymore. I'm tired.
Well, and I have the sense that if we sort of go inside this, there's a pattern that's about to happen here. Like when I've heard you say that in the past, sort of action stops. You sort of hunker down, as if like to wait out a storm. And that's okay, but I just want to notice the pattern here. And maybe there's another pattern that's possible to build. Like maybe there's something different we could do here. Because if we do what we're pulled to do here, we're going to replicate the same pattern. Noticing larger patterns of action is one of the points on the hexagon model. This is an act-consistent approach, and sort of tries to catch in the moment the larger and larger patterns of action that we're building with what we do when we're drawn into struggles, or what we do when we begin to open up and more flexibly explore the alternatives, different ways of carrying this forward into a life worth living.